Good morning. Welcome into Five Clubs. Great to have you with us on this Monday edition. It is November here, Golf Channel, and of course, PGA Tour Radio. That is channel 92 on Sirius XM. No matter what day, what month, this program is always brought to you by Sentry Insurance. Business insurance needs are met and satisfied with Sentry. They are right by you. We appreciate their investment in the game of golf with the USGA, the first tee, and of course, right here. Golf Pride, when it comes to grips, I actually hit some golf balls this weekend while watching Vandy go down 34-10 to Texas. And I had the Align Max grips. I've got them on every club through my bag. They're the best grips that I've had, not to mention the reverse taper putter grip series as well. And Peter Millar, when it comes to all the things you need as you think about what you need to get for a brother, for a sister, for a dad, for a son, for the holidays, PeterMillar.com, every single thing you could possibly need, from things you need to go to work, on the golf course, leisure, working out. It is PeterMillar.com. All right, on this Monday, Gabby Herzig. It's been a little while for one of our Five Clubs contributors. She's going to be with me here in less than 15 minutes. We have not spoken to her since she played in the U.S. Women's Mid-Amateur at Monterey Peninsula Country Club. Looking forward to just having a reflection or two and then get to a lot of stuff with her. Of course, all of her great work at The Athletic. And then Will Haskett, who is as prepared as anybody that I've ever been around when it comes to doing live broadcasts of golf. He's on PGA Tour Live. He's on PGA Tour Radio, whether he's hosting, whether he's an on-course reporter. Will Haskett, he's also an author. He wrote a book about the science of golf, about math, and about the data, and about technology. And I read the book. It's very, very interesting. His thoughts on a number of other topics as well. And you're thinking, okay, it was Halloween Friday, and hope the kids made out quite well. But we fell back yesterday, and it was really kind of dreary and sad as the sun went down at like 5:12 yesterday. And you're going, well, no golf. Oh, there was golf. An important golf, really, that was played over the weekend. And actually, there are 2 weeks coming up, not only on the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour that we'll get to in a moment, but the Hong Kong Open. And the Hong Kong Open has great history, but it also has added benefits starting this year because Augusta National is now giving invitations to the Masters, not to mention the Open Championship, giving invitations to the Open Championship to the winners of these national opens. And the Hong Kong Open is getting a Masters invitation. So let's take a look. You wanted that Hong Kong final leaderboard. You got it. Tom McKibben by 7 covers the spread. I think the spread was 6.5, kicks the extra point, beats Uline by 7. That doesn't happen much. And then if you look at that first page, it's representative of what was one of the themes of the tournament. A lot of live golfers on that first page. Louis Oosthuizen, Matt Jones, Thomas Pieters, Charles Howell III. Little shout out to Scott Henn. Scott Henn's got a lot of miles on that odometer. He's 52, and he's still competing at a high level. He is a guy who could always move the golf ball. But Tom McKibben is the story as he wins his first Asian Tour event. He's won on the DP World Tour. And Tom McKibben, if you go back to the beginning of this year, had a choice. And life is about choices, and it's nice to have good choices as opposed to a lot of bad choices, like some are less awful than the others. He had good choices to make, and that was to satisfy, based on the performance that he put together on the DP World Tour in 2024, becoming a full-time member of the PGA Tour. And at the beginning of the year, there were rumors that he might go to live. He's 22 years of age. He's got a world of talent. He's from Northern Ireland, literally the same neighborhood for all intents and purposes as Rory McIlroy. And on the eve, truly, of Tom McKibben choosing whether to stay or to go, Rory McIlroy had this to say as we take a look at January of 2025. This is a Rory McIlroy quote. Again, this is right before he made the decision. I think what he potentially is sacrificing is giving up with access to majors, potential Ryder Cup spot, depending on, how he would play. But if were I in his position and I had his potential, which I think I have been before, I wouldn't make that decision. But I'm not him. I'm not in his shoes. He's a grown man at this point, can make his own decisions. All I can do is try to give him my perspective. Look, that is a very fair, pragmatic way of looking at something that you wish he didn't, because I think that's what it was. He wished that he chose to come and play on the PGA Tour, but he said, I'm not in his shoes, and boy, isn't that a good lesson for all of us. You can give advice to others, but they're their decisions, not your decisions. So Rory said that then, and literally within 24 hours, Tom McKibben was gone to live. And you wonder, what is that going to mean in the immediacy, because he's not getting world ranking points, and as well as he might play on live, it doesn't mean that he's getting closer to playing in major championships. Well, now, because Augusta National made the choice to take Masters invitations away from the fall series events on the PGA Tour and bestow them on national opens around the world throughout the course of the calendar year, Tom McKibben is going to drive down Magnolia Lane for the first time. And yes, this is about Tom McKibben because he's a very talented guy, and while he had Rory as a mentor, he's now part of John Rahn's team and Tyrrell Hatton's team. And that's got to be a good thing, to be around them and by osmosis almost make them your new mentors. But it also proves something about Augusta National. It was something that Branch Rickey is being attributed many, many decades ago for coining the phrase, luck is the residue of design. Things generally work out for Augusta National. It's not just because they're lucky. It's because they have great vision about what is important, what's necessary, what's next, where do we need to go, and what's the best way to make our event better. And I'm not saying that all of a sudden Tom McKibben makes the Masters better. The Masters is good whether the best player in the world, Scottie Scheffler's in the field or not. It'd be unfortunate if he wasn't. But these national opens, whether it be the Hong Kong Open, the Australian Open, the South African Open, the Scottish Open, the Japan Open, and I'm forgetting one. I have the whole list right here. Oh, gosh, I said Australia. Anyway, all of those, Spanish Open, all of those winners who are not otherwise already exempt. And Marco Penge won the Spanish Open a couple of weeks ago. Most people think that Marco Penge is likely to be on the 2027 European Ryder Cup team. Before he does that, and he was likely, like I said, going to finish in the top 50 at the end of the year, which would have garnered him an invitation to the Masters. But he's in, and now Tom McKibben is in. So last year, if you recall, the USGA and the R&A both created a category based on performance on live for a player to gain entry into their major championships. And Augusta National chose not to create a category of live performance that would garner someone potentially an invitation to the Masters. But by giving out invitations to winners in these national opens, and oh, by the way, you know how many live players were in the Hong Kong Open? 29. Two of them past Masters champions who are already exempt into the Masters field as they go forward in their life until a certain age. So it's not that a lot of those live guys were not going to be in the field anyway, but there's a fair number of live players who are not already exempt into the Masters who are going to be in Australia the first week in December to compete in that National Open. And I think these National Opens, one, it gives the Masters a grander international flavor potentially, but also it ostensibly is creating potentially a category for a live player, whether it's one or a couple or none, to play their way into the Masters field. So they didn't create a category, but, and not in a roundabout way, they created a pathway. If you win an important National Open, you have earned an invitation to the Masters tournament. It works out, doesn't it? And again, luck is not the residue of design. One other thing I mentioned this week, the DP World Tour, Rory McIlroy in the field in Abu Dhabi, and then he's going to play next week. He's seeking his 7th Harry Vardon Trophy and his 4th in a row, and he's got a big lead over Marco Penge by over 440 points. There are 7 European Ryder Cup members in the field this week in Abu Dhabi. Hey, it's November. Golf early in the morning on a Thursday. I'm in. and Rory in the field the next 2 weeks. And oh, by the way, he's in the Australian Open field. So these events in this time of the year, and we still have 3 PGA Tour events as well, there are a lot of really top players. And here, primarily domestically on the PGA Tour, it's about employment. And those stories will unfold and will culminate at the RSM at Sea Island the week before Thanksgiving. All right, we take our first break. When we continue, she's the best player that contributes to 5 clubs. Well, I know Johnson thinks he still has game, but have you ever seen him in a foul ball off the tee? Wow, it just landed about 3 fairways over. She was in the U.S. Women's Mid-Am. We have not spoken to her since, plus her thoughts on a number of items as it relates to what's going on the landscape of professional golf. A little bit later on, Will Haskett as well, and a couple other stories we'll wrap the show up with. Good stories, very good stories. One guy thought he was going to retire, and then he played too well. How often does that happen? We take a break. Gabby Herzig coming up next right here on 5 Clubs. Good to have you with us on Monday here. It is 5 Clubs Golf Channel, also PGA Tour Radio. That's channel 92 on Sirius XM. This segment brought to you by Peter Millar. It is the fall season. Whatever your needs are, from jackets to outerwear to cashmere sweaters to corduroy slacks, they've got it all at petermillar.com. Not to mention, just look on their website. They have 40 retail locations as well around the country and actually the world. All right, joining me now from The Athletic and a 5 Clubs contributor, and looking at that Open, we probably need to refresh and add some photos from the U.S. Women's Mid-Am from her experience that she had at Monterey Peninsula Country Club. I'm speaking, of course, of Gabby Herzig. Good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Gary. It's great to be with you. I know it's been a little while, so I'm sure we have a lot to talk about.
We do. And you know what? We didn't have a chance, and I listened to and watched some interviews you did in the aftermath of playing in the Mid-Am, and I thought it was, first of all, it was enthralling to hear your thoughts about the experience, and you wrote about it. Just now that we're several weeks out from it, you and I haven't spoken, I'm curious about a couple things. It's not about, putting and, how'd you drive it. How was your focus? How do you think you did in the focus department?
Probably not the best, but I that's why this was such a great learning experience for me, Gary. I haven't competed in an event like this ever, and I also haven't competed in a stroke play tournament since I was in college, and I graduated in 2021. So I was really throwing myself into the fire, and the way that, I focused was kind of it was a surprise to me as well. I was just experimenting with my process, with my routines, and seeing what worked and seeing what didn't. And now I know for next time that, I can't let myself get caught up too much in the environment and what's around me and looking at the players next to me on the driving range or what other people are doing to prepare, and really just stick to my zone. You hear players talk about that all the time, but to actually experience it for yourself just gives you that wake-up call that, it's harder than you think to focus on yourself in this game, even though it is such an individual sport.
It really, really is. The other thing I wanted to ask you, and I know your reflex is probably to be self-deprecating, but don't, be honest with me. Your body and your mind over the course of the competitive rounds, do you remember specifically when you felt they were most in sync? Like you felt like like your body was responding to your mind being in a kind of an unconscious state? Were there stages that you're like, yeah, between 4 and 7 or whatever it was? That's the other thing I'm interested in.
Definitely. I think that, I obviously had my blips throughout this experience. I wrote about the fact that I made a 12 on a hole in my first round and the process of having to bounce back from that. And then the second day, I hit a horrible shot. I hit a shank on my 5th hole of the day, and I kind of had to battle those thoughts for the rest of the round. But I managed to kind of get in these little pockets of kind of being in the zone. And I will give credit to my brother, David. He was on the bag for me. He was my caddy. And as you know, Gary, we have a lot of golfers in my family, yes, but David is not necessarily one of them. He is interested in the game, but never played, as competitively as my other brother and I did. And so at the beginning of the event, I kind of turned to my brother and I said, I just want you to carry the bag. I want you to hand me my rangefinder. I don't necessarily want to talk about golf with you. And I know that bummed him out a little bit because I could see it on his face. So the second day, after I kind of knew, I have nothing to lose at this point, I'm out of it, I'm not going to make this cut. And we just had a lot of fun to have. Honestly, I turned to him and I said, what do you see in this putt? And this was about on the back nine of the second day. And for that back nine, I started having him kind of help me read the greens. And honestly, Gary, that was my best 9 holes of the entire event. And I probably should have turned him a little bit earlier because it ended up being kind of this calming presence to even talk it over with someone, even if you're not necessarily going to listen to exactly what they're saying or you trust yourself more than the other person. Just the process of talking things out loud ended up really helping me and kind of putting me in this, maybe a little trance, if you will, kind of not as focusing, not focusing too hard. I think that's something that I learned about myself definitely is there is such thing as trying too hard. And the way I was able to kind of distract myself with my brother and having a little bit more fun with it really ended up helping me so much. So I could feel in that sense in those last 9 holes, like being more in cruise control sort of mode. And it was really cool to feel that, especially finishing the event on that note instead of, some of those more nerve-wracking moments that I did experience earlier in the event.
I love all of that. I'm so interested in people, whether they do it all the time or someone like yourself. Like you said, if you're thinking about trying hard, then you're thinking about trying hard instead of just doing what it is that you're doing. That's really neat. It's awesome. And there's a handful of people, and Amelia Duran, and a few. Drew Stoltz has played. He's gotten close to winning a 4-ball, and he's got a job. Brandel Chambly has done live from, and then he's played in a U.S. Senior Open Championship. These are neat things, and obviously we're all here at 5 Clubs really proud of you. All right, let's talk about some items here as it pertains to the professional game. The Sentry being canceled. What do you think this is going to mean for top players who might have done the Hawaii 2-step, and then in the broader sense, what it means for the West Coast swing?
Yeah, I think it might have a more detrimental effect than the tour wants for those first couple events of the year. You've heard a couple of players mentioning maybe not making the trip over there just for logistics purposes and playing in other parts of the world at that time of year. So I think, it is going to be more of an anticlimactic start to the season than we've seen in years past. I know a lot of people look forward to watching the Sentry every year and watching it on primetime TV on the East Coast and seeing all the best players in the world. There's always the added element of seeing new sponsorships and new coaching partnerships, caddy pairings. There's kind of a lot of anticipation for that first event, but now we're going to have a full field event instead, which in the past couple of years has had strong fields, but not nearly as strong as you're going to have at a signature event, obviously. But in terms of going forward, I think the most interesting thing is that, in those announcements the tour made around the Sentry, there wasn't much clarity in terms of what's going to happen beyond 2026. All we really know is that the Sentry is canceled for next year, but there wasn't necessarily a commitment for 2027 and beyond, even though the Sentry has a partnership with the tour going forward. So, I think it all kind of connects back to what's going on right now within the PGA Tour with the Future Competitions Committee. There's a lot of change being discussed behind the scenes right now for what the PGA Tour competitive structure is going to look like as a whole in the future. So I think this announcement really gives us a hint in terms of what they're looking at there and the bigger changes that could be coming.
Yeah, and Gabby, with that, let's talk about that, because internal change, a couple of hires by Brian Rolapp, these are at the senior level. These are people who are going to have a lot of responsibility, and at the same time, there was voluntary opportunities for people to leave the PGA Tour. I don't know how many have made the choice to do that, when that would be in effect. But let's get back to these C-suite hires. These are senior executives that Rolapp has background with the National Football League. What do you think this signifies internally, and what effect, if any, do you think it means for the product?
Absolutely. I mean, we kind of expected this. Brian Rolapp came in with huge ambitions for the PGA Tour and also really leaning on his experience from the NFL. So I'm not surprised at all to see some of those names coming in that he's worked with directly at the NFL or in the past. I think it's a great sign for the PGA Tour and people should look to these hires and say, this is exactly why Brian Rolapp was hired. He had this outside of the box vision with the most successful sports league in the world. And we're getting that hands-on experience at the PGA Tour now. And there are huge things to come. I mean, I think in particular, a lot of these hires are going to be extremely beneficial for what might be the tour's main priority right now, which is eventually renegotiating that TV contract that expires at the end of 2030 and the beginning of 2031. And that's what's really driving, that's what the tour needs to focus on in terms of revenue. So Brian Rolapp is going to be huge in terms of setting the tour up for those renegotiations. And I think the hires that he made definitely will complement that process.
And, all of these commissioners, they understand the value of their best players, these assets, these stars. As we head to 2026, is Rory, in your mind, the tour's biggest star, while at the same time, Scottie Scheffler might be its most important asset because he plays a little bit more, he wins more, he consistently contends? Is that fair to kind of put one in one category and one in the other?
Yeah, they're just in such different places in their careers right now. So, a Scottie Scheffler has been asked before about playing all over the world, playing globally, and he's not really in that place right now. He's focusing on the PGA Tour and playing in the US, whereas Rory is going on a global world tour right now. He just played in India. As you mentioned earlier, he's in Abu Dhabi. He's going to play in Australia. He's committed to playing that for the next 2 years, I believe. So I look at Rory as more of a global superstar than Scottie Scheffler. And also Rory has just been around for much longer in the golf, general ecosystem. I know this is very anecdotal evidence, Gary, but there was a trend going around on the internet a few weeks ago where golfers or people following the golf community ask their, significant other or their friends who didn't necessarily know golf to name 30 golfers and see who they could come up with. I'm not sure if you saw this going around, but anecdotally, I think Rory was at the top of a lot of those lists, and Scottie Scheffler came a little bit downwards. That's kind of how you see which names are seeping into the, general news feeds of your friends and family who don't necessarily play golf. So I actually thought that was a really fascinating exercise. But, Scottie Scheffler is winning all the time. He's the most dominant player in golf right now, but Rory has that human element to him where he really wears his heart on his sleeve. He describes himself as an impulsive person, and I think a lot more people can relate to that in terms of just the two of their personalities as well.
Yeah, and Gabby, I think with Rory, there's a polarizing component to it. And if you look at other sports, Brady was polarizing. A lot of it was rooted in how much they won. And Mahomes, same thing. I'm over this. Enough of him. LeBron, same thing. I don't know if Aaron Judge and Ohtani get a lot of negativity, but Rory he's a lightning rod for things because he's righteous with his words. And then the Ryder Cup, I think, takes his profile in a broader kind of all sports sense into a much wider lane, don't you think?
Absolutely, especially the way that he reacted to a lot of the Ryder Cup drama around the crowd. I mean, he wasn't shy about responding to the criticism that he was getting out there, the heckling, and some people love it and some people don't. It's kind of, as you said, it has that polarizing aspect. A lot of people have opinions about Rory McIlroy. He drives conversation in the sport, and I definitely think that adds to the way that he's become this global superstar. It's fun to have debates and discuss, what Rory is doing, what decisions he's making, his opinion on X, Y, and Z that's happening in the sport. So it definitely all, adds to his status right now in the game.
All right, let me ask you, what do you think was the best and equally least talked about story in men's professional golf in 2025?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one, Gary. I think kind of jumping off of the Rory discussion, I think Justin Rose might be up there as the least talked about, especially because, runner-up at the Masters.
It's on my sheet. He's mine.
Okay, there we go. We're so aligned, Gary. And yeah, he came runner-up at the Masters. He almost became the oldest winner of the Masters, I believe, since Jack Nicklaus. He won a signature event. He went off at the Ryder Cup, just making so many birdies left and right, and just having that passion and just the sharpness in his game as a 45-year-old. And the way that he phrased it going into the season, he called it the Indian summer of his career, and he really seized on that opportunity. And I don't think we talk about it enough because there is that shadow of Rory McIlroy, who actually did go on to win the Masters. But the performance that he had there at Augusta National was unlike any other we've seen from a player, of that age in a really long time. So I thought that was super impressive and just inspiring all around to see someone pushing like that at the age that he is. And also there's been a lot of talk about a guy like Justin Rose could have easily taken a deal with Live Golf like some of his peers did, and he chose not to, and he's continuing on the PGA Tour, and he's really thriving.
No, I think, 45 and winning. Lucas Glover, over 40, had a couple of wins a couple of years ago. I thought that the window had closed on Justin being a Ryder Cup member and a guy who could really contend to win on the PGA Tour. I'm with you. I think 45, with the choice he chose not to make, not to mention the choice to say, I don't need to do this anymore. I've got plenty, but to drive and to dig and to pursue it the way he has and to still be that good, I'm with you. All right, as we look into 26, who do you think, for you, if you said, this is the most interesting interview subject that I want to do a profile on, who would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. And maybe not necessarily a profile, but I'm really interested to see what Tiger Woods' next move is going to be.
Yeah.
I know we just heard, the news of his back surgery, but in speaking, and reading about the surgery itself, it doesn't seem like it necessarily rules him out of competition. And there's been talk of the Champions Tour getting ready for Tiger Woods appearances. So I'm really curious to see, if he makes those appearances at the Hero World Championship and describes what his plan is for the coming months. We went through basically a whole year without Tiger. There was, the TGL appearances, but then after that, there was, not a lot that we heard from the superstar of golf that's carried the sport for so many years. So I'm curious what that next chapter looks like for Tiger, whether it's going to be continuing to attempt to make a comeback and play competitively, or be more of in the role which he has been serving in the past couple of years as orchestrating behind the scenes at the PGA Tour. So that's kind of what I'm most fascinated by right now, is we're seeing the tour thrive in a post-Tiger Woods era, but is that what we're going to continue to see in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think we don't get our minds in a place where people get to a certain age and things that you would have never associated them with now become a real possibility. The administrative side, the corporate side, the driving of the vision of the PGA Tour, I didn't really see that. I saw Golf Design, he's doing that. The team golf thing, he's come around to that. No, there's no doubt. 2026 in his 50th year, and you're thinking about him and maybe a U.S. Senior Open at Scioto, Jack's childhood home, and the romance of that, looking for his 10th USGA championship. He remains incredibly interesting while not being seen hardly at all. Listen, it's great to see your face, get your thoughts. Have a great Thanksgiving. We'll talk to you before the end of the year for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you. Gabby Herzig of The Athletic. I know she's still working on some big stories before the end of the year. And of course, we're really proud to have her as a contributor here. When we continue, Will Haskett, PGA Tour Live, also PGA Tour Radio, his thoughts on some other items as it relates to the PGA Tour in this 100. Because that is what the threshold is for employment, fully exempt employment, and some other things with him in terms of what's working, what isn't, what he would tweak in terms of the system of the PGA Tour. Bottom of the hour, Monday edition of 5 Clubs, Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio. Back with Will right after this. Back in this Monday edition of 5 Clubs, Golf Channel, also PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. This segment brought to you by Sentry Insurance. We were just talking about the fact there'll be no tournament. It doesn't mean they're not still heavily invested in golf with the USGA, the First Tee, and certainly right here with us. Business insurance needs are met by Sentry. All right, joining me now, PGA Tour Live, PGA Tour Radio, author as well, Will Haskett with me. And again, the book is The Science of Golf, Math, Technology, and Data. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm great. I'm just glad we didn't wear the same suit this morning. I was telling you to break. I had to dress it down when I saw that we were going to wear the exact same suit today.
Every time I put this on, I worry that I'm going to see 4 or 5 people wearing the same thing. All right, let me start with this because you have such a good depth of understanding on a lot of things, particularly the system of the PGA Tour, and you have opinions on that. What do you think is working right now, and what, in your estimation, needs to get maybe tweaked a little bit?
Yeah, it's a season of change, right? We sort of feel as if we're in a moment of flux right now with new leadership, for-profit versus the non-for-profit model of the PGA Tour. I think the questions that have to be asked right now is, coming off a year where you saw ratings increases across the board, what is truly working? Because I think if you're having this conversation 12 months ago, everybody's saying, okay, we've got to change this. We know the system is sort of moving. So for Brian Rolapp right now and the team that he's assembling around him, well, okay, this sort of status quo in many respects worked in 2025. So what is it about that model that is really working? What do the ratings improvements teach us about what the audience wants from a professional golf product? I think something we don't talk about enough, Gary, is familiarity. Venues matter. Tournament hosts matter. Sponsor relationships matter in the space of men's professional golf. And while we get really, really into the weeds sometimes about, hey, this particular tournament's got a big rating and somebody on the other coast is watching this particular tournament, we don't really think about the investment of what a solid local tournament is to the fabric of the PGA Tour. So I don't want to lose that sort of moving forward. So I think there's more questions right now than answers in terms of what's working, because it worked more in 2025 than it has in years past. And I think when you look at the competitive landscape of professional golf, those venues, all of the infrastructure, I mean, everything down to an agronomy standpoint and how the PGA Tour invests in its venues and invests in its people to create the best potential playing fields is really important. I think if anything's going to be tweaked moving forward, and we're adjusting on the fly, right? There's been a lot of very, very abrupt changes to professional golf on the PGA Tour the last couple of years. It's whatever that delineation is of that line between signature events and non-signature events on the PGA Tour. I think the PGA Tour's success is if it's one tour. I understand the tournaments might feel a little bit different, but right now it feels like there's two very distinct lanes. I think the best non-major tournaments of this past season are the player-hosted signature events. So if your signature events can feel a little bit more robust, the fields maybe grow to 90, you have a cut down to 50 or 60 guys, so that there's real stake in the game. If it's something that I think the fans have spoken about this year, they do want to see the best players playing against each other as much as possible, but they want there to be skin in the game. It's not a free pass. They don't want to see these guys get a free pass to Sunday, a free pass through the season. They want churn, and they want guys to have to earn it. Cuts have to matter. I think that's where we need to go, is delineate that line a little bit better.
Yeah, and you know, your point about the player signature events, Tiger, Arnold, Jack, it's also Riviera, Bay Hill, Muirfield Village, familiarity. And you know the venues, you know a lot of the holes. And the other thing you said is that there's jeopardy if you're not good enough on Friday night, that you're not going to play on the weekend as well. What do you think is likely to be the most significant change in the next 18 to 24 months on the tour?
I think it'll be contraction. Whether it's the bodies that we're seeing right now from 125 full cards down to 100, the churn number is really going to matter, Gary. I don't think it really matters how many guys have full cards on the PGA Tour as long as there is churn. That if you're not playing well, you are going to lose your spot. If you are playing well, you are going to have a spot on that next sort of level. It's about a 40% churn rate right now. 21 players made the top 50 into the signature events next year that weren't in the top 50 to begin this year. But we only had one healthy player, so a non-injured player. This doesn't count a Will Zalatoris. We only had one player that right now is outside the top 100 in the FedEx Cup standings that started the year inside the top 50 in that signature event lane. That feels like something that needs to be tweaked a little bit, so that whatever that contraction sort of looks like, I feel like that's going to be the biggest change. And it's not just the players, it's what the schedule looks like. It feels as if we're getting closer and closer to a reality where there's just less tournaments throughout the course of the year. I don't know if that's going to be the reality. I heard you and Gabby talking about in the beginning of this upcoming season because of what happened with the water shortage. Is this an opening to where Hawaii isn't the start of the PGA Tour season coming up in 2027? Sony's deal is up after the end of this year for the Sony Open in Hawaii. Back to the venues matter. I think the beginning of the PGA Tour season is perfect. As Gabby was saying, primetime golf on an absolutely beautiful layout. And if blows at Kapalua, it's one of the coolest tests in all of golf. I don't know how you leave that off, but I also understand it's probably on the table. So how many events that we're really familiar with, talking about familiarity, aren't there anymore? I think that's the big change in the next couple of years is contraction across the board.
You know, Brian Rolapp, when he did his extensive press conference at the Tour Championship, used certain terms that people, obviously, pulled the meat off the bone of every one of them for days and weeks. One of them I find most interesting, and that is the idea of competitive parity. He felt, and again, competitive parity is absolutely the world that he came from.
Yes.
I think the world he's in has it as well. So how do you market and sell competitive parity on the PGA Tour, which there's a lot of parity on the PGA Tour already? Yes. Add the word competitive. What does that mean to you, and how do you market it?
It's really difficult, Gary, because to me it's saying Michael Kim's story this year. Great story, right? Nearly wins, great social media follow, engaging, his up and down in his PGA Tour journey, and now he's one of those top 50 players, right? So there's one of your guys, right, that comes from the outside, makes it to the inside, comes all the way back from the depths of trying to find his game again. Like, that's a competitive parity sort of story. But at the end of the day, stars matter. Rory and Scottie and all of these guys matter. And the biggest problem with competitive parity is we don't really do a good enough job of telling people how much better the best players in the world are than their peers on the PGA Tour. I mean, Scottie Scheffler is 2.7 shots better than the average player on the PGA Tour per round this season. The gap from him to number 5 in strokes gained total, him to Ben Griffin, is the same as Ben Griffin to the 145th player in the FedEx Cup in the strokes gained total this year on the PGA Tour. So we can't necessarily say there's competitive parity when you have superstar players who are that much better than everybody else. And that's really what people generally want to see. They want to see the best players playing at the highest level. So it's a tough one, right? Because you're trying to tell the story of the journeyman, the Ben Griffin, the Michael Kim redemption story, anybody that's made it back into the signature event lane this year, while also recognizing that, look, the best players are just better. And that's a problem too, is there's no salary cap in professional golf. It's the best player. If we were to say, okay, now Scottie Scheffler can only play with 12 clubs instead of 14 clubs because we want to create competitive parity, then that's a completely different professional golf landscape. But he's better than everybody else. So you can't create that much parity. And I think we get lost in that a little bit, is that we want to have this meritocracy and guys falling in and falling out. Well, the reality is there's a couple dozen guys that should never fall out because they're just that much better than the rest of the golf world.
Yeah, you mentioned Scheffler. Let me ask you this, as somebody who not only, understands data, but you help others understand it as well. This is broader in the sense that Scheffler, the Tiger stuff, to me, I think people think we're making comparisons when most of us are trying to do is give context. And yeah. Tiger gives context to Scheffler's accomplishments. Of all the things that hang out there, way out there on the horizon, is there one that you think he could make a reasonable conversation? And again, total numbers of weeks at number 1, highly unlikely. But weeks in a row, I don't know. He's got such a big margin that the next 52 are likely to be him. He's at 100 straight right now. That'd get him to 152. Tiger did, I believe, 264. Whether it's that or something else, is there something that is a Bob Beamon Tiger number that you think Scheffler could make a real conversation?
I think from a stat nerdy standpoint, can he have a +3 strokes gained total season? So we're in a quarter century now of shot length data, right? And Scottie's season this year from a strokes gained standpoint was only bested by 3 Tiger Woods seasons. You could probably guess since 2004 which of those seasons it might be when Tiger was at his most dominant. So when I say a +3 season, can he be 3 shots better than the average PGA Tour player? Tiger did it twice. No, he did 3 times, like I said. So that would be one, just from a basic standpoint, is compared to his peers, can he be as good as Tiger was at his best compared to his peers? So we would at least have that number. Everything else, Gary, is such a longevity game. And I also don't think we talk about the depth of field behind him. And this is no disrespect to the guys that Tiger was playing against in 2000 or even 2008. But the game's deeper. It is. It's just better from guy 10 to 50 than it was 20 years ago. And that makes it harder, especially with tighter schedules and all of these guys playing against each other all the time right now. It's just hard to amass the wins and the basic sort of numbers that we would do to compare these two guys. If Scottie rattles off 2 majors each the next couple of seasons, going past his age 30 season on the PGA Tour, then we can talk about those big sort of numbers. I mean, maybe consecutive cuts, but now what do cuts matter? Like, what do the schedule look like when it comes to cuts over the next couple of years? Those are going to be hard. It's hard. I don't want to put those on. I want to respect him for the player that he is right now. But if I'm looking at it from a numbers standpoint in terms of his dominance, can he have a +3 season? He came really close this year.
Yeah, I don't know how you rack up cuts made when a 30-year starts don't have cuts.
Right. Exactly
That's not his fault. There's so many other things I wanted to get to. We will save that for the next visit. Thank you, my friend, very much. Look forward to doing this very soon.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay, Will Haskett again, his book as well. Speaking of winning words, his words in his book, that conversation, Winning Words, presented by Sentry Insurance. They're right by you. His book, if you're interested in the data of golf, the science of golf, math, technology, data, very, very interesting. And he explains things, and you're going, I won't understand this. I promise you, he helps you understand it all. We come back, some final thoughts, a couple really good stories as well to put a bow on this Monday edition of 5 Clubs. Back right after this. Back in with a couple minutes left here on this Monday edition. A couple stories to share with you, good stories. James Morrison said before he played his last event, which was going to be his last event on what is the Challenge Tour it's kind of the Korn Ferry Tour for the DP World Tour at the Rolex Grand Finale. And he had his 13-year-old son, Finley, caddying for him. What a great way to play your last event. Won a couple times on the DP World Tour. I'm just not going to do this anymore. James, winning changes everything because now you can't quit. He was going to quit, and now he's back on the DP World Tour. That's awesome. He jumped 30 spots in the rankings, and now he will be fully exempt back on the DP World Tour. Just when you thought you were out, they pulled you back in, James. That is fantastic. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Morgan Hoffman is somebody who grew up very close to where I grew up, and I've always had an affinity for him. Well, guess what? Morgan Hoffman did something yesterday he'd never done before. Morgan played on the PGA Tour, was an All-American at Oklahoma State, and then he was diagnosed with something that really took his career of playing professional golf away from him, muscular dystrophy. Well, guess what? He is building a facility in Costa Rica. He has turned his entire focus now on giving help to other people when it comes to care and wellness. Well, guess what? He ran the New York Marathon yesterday with 9 other people supporting the Morgan Hoffman Foundation. He sent me a text a couple minutes ago. He said, I laughed, I cried, I had cramps, I had to stop for a few minutes, but he said it was exhilarating. Absolutely it was, and for someone like him who grew up in Wyckoff, New Jersey, which is in the shadows of Midtown Manhattan, to do what he did and to do it with the purpose that he has to raise money. And his foundation, by the way, was one of the official charity partners of the New York Marathon. So I'm hopeful that a ton of money was raised for him to continue to do what he's doing, which is his passion to provide wellness for other people who are dealing with things that can be physically debilitating. And if something is physically debilitating, well, guess what? It's likely to be intellectually, psychologically, and spiritually debilitating as well. I'm going to end today just to share something with you. I can promise you this is not about me. This is about a whole lot of other people. But today marks another trip around the sun for me, living with a peace of mind that was almost gone altogether. It was gone. And there was enough people, really everybody in my life, who I call the rope holders, who never let go of the rope. So if you're out there or you know somebody who is out there who was struggling right now, whether it's with alcohol or with drugs, and they feel like there's no hope. It's not about next week, and it's not even about tomorrow, just for today. So I can promise you, because I was where you were some years ago, but you know what? You start stacking days on top of each other, and the next thing you know, it's like, you know what? Hope is returning, and peace of mind has a value you cannot put on it. So to all the people in my life, very close to me, I mean, like really close, and also very far, and you know who all of you are, who never let go of that rope, I'm here because of all of you. So for all of us here on 5 Clubs, Signature Sports Group, we hope you have a great Monday. Justin Leonard, the champion golfer of the year in 1997, will join us. Have a great Monday. We'll see you tomorrow.